Today we're talking about one of the original G.I. Joes. Today we're talking all about ZAP. Rafael Melendez was born in New York City. He grew up in a nice middle-class family in Westchester County with an attorney father and a pediatrician mother. His grandmother had come to America from Puerto Rico with nothing but the clothes on her back, and their family built themselves up with hard work and the pursuit of the American dream. When Rafi grew up, he went off to college at MIT. One day he went back home to see his sister Graciela, who had just finished her residency and was going abroad to Africa with Doctors Without Borders to make a difference. Like his parents and his sister, Rafi too wanted to make a difference, but his way, the way he decided to give back, was to join the United States Army. With the U.S. Army after basic, Melendez went for AIT along with both engineer and ordnance school, where he became a qualified expert on M14s, M16s, his M1911, and then specialized in M17, M79s, along with law and tow launch systems, XM20, and the MX-47 Dragon missile, and he's also an expert with the tactical automated fire control, which would be for 13 Charlie MOS, but this is G.I. Joe, which means he's basically 11 Bravo, 11H, 13 Bravo, 21 Bravo, 13C, and based on some of his other stories, even though he's ranged from an E4 up to an E7, also 152G, an AH-1 aviator. With the G.I. Joe team, ZAP became the team's armor-piercing and anti-tank weapons specialist, and as the team expanded and his role was supplanted by newer members, ZAP became more of a demolition specialist. He would be the one to teach newer Joes what they needed to qualify for ranks. He would also deploy with the team, carrying any man-portable anti-tank or armor-piercing rocket launcher in the Joe's arsenal. ZAP quickly developed a reputation for being cool as a cucumber under fire and for his professional attitude. While ZAP first appeared in Marvel Comics and Larry Hama's G.I. Joe A Real American Hero comic book series with the very first issue, our story actually starts with the Hama-penned 2006 miniseries entitled G.I. Joe Declassified. In this story, in the earliest days of the G.I. Joe team, ZAP was on a mission in the jungles of Sierra Gorda with Stalker, Grunt, and Rock and Roll to recon the Sierra Gorda Liberation Front. They saw some SGLF revolutionaries ready to assassinate some people, and ZAP was ready to fire on them. Then a Russian-made Hind attack helicopter flown by the Baroness dropped napalm on their position, so they had to beat feet. Stalker had ZAP take all their C4 and rocks and set up a booby trap as they continued to egress to the LZ for extraction. As ZAP armed his booby trap, they were still danger close and actually well within blast radius, so they immediately continued to run while their pursuers closed in. When the rucks exploded, a squadron of attack helicopters buzzed overhead right at treetop level, but they ended up getting tunnel vision, lost their SA, and collided mid-air, so the Joe unit went in to do a BDA on the crash site. Stalker took a wounded pilot with them, but the pilot was slowing down, so ZAP inferred that they should just shoot that guy and keep moving. As the pilot insulted ZAP, calling him a traitor for helping the gringos, ZAP revealed his backstory to us. Again, they were ambushed, and without them knowing, they now had Jodie Shooter Craig on Overwatch as she stalked through the jungle in her ghillie suit. They finally made it onto the Black Hawk at the evac site with their wounded prisoner, but Shooter sniped their captive from the brush and he tumbled out of the helo. In G.I. Joe's first ARAH issue, ZAP was a critical part of Operation Lady Doomsday. In that mission, Cobra Commander and the Baroness kidnapped Dr. Adele Burkhart, and so Generals Austin and Flagg spun up a response with their brand new elite Special Counter-Terrorist Group Delta Rapid Deployment Force, codenamed G.I. Joe. ZAP was part of Landing Force 2 along with Hawk, Grand Slam, Rock and Roll, Steeler, and Clutch. They made a beach landing via their LCT. ZAP helped man Steeler's tank with both Steeler and Hawk as they rolled over enemy concertina wire and crushed some MG emplacements at the beach. As they neared Cobra's main fortress, a Cobra trooper popped out and disabled the tank with a rocket right to the tank's radiator, and so ZAP took them out with a single rocket fired from his shoulder atop the tank. They were able to rescue Dr. Burkhart and get her out via a Cobra transport chopper that ZAP flew. In issue 3, ZAP was back at Fort Wadsworth Motor Pool and manning the lift to the sublevels. In the Operation Wingfield story, ZAP worked with Grunt to deactivate Vance Wingfield's nuclear bomb, and this story was included with ZAP's 2004 action figure as a reprint. And then later he was assigned to the inner ring of protection during a mission at NASA on Cape Canaveral. He was with the team in a close-range firefight close to the crawler transporter and launch platform. ZAP then ended up in a rib offshore with Hawk and Stalker, which is when he fired off a rocket that hit and sunk Cobra Commander's vessel and saved the day. Then ZAP was on the infiltration team with Snake Eyes and Scarlet as they sought to verify and then neutralize a suspected Cobra stronghold in Midtown Manhattan. As they waited for the primary assault team to flush out Cobra, the roof of the building collapsed and trapped the roof team. The entire roof detached and flew the trio to the Cobra-controlled town of Springfield. En route, the Baroness gassed them all, and they all started tripping really hard. Like Zap looked like he was melting on the floor to Scarlet, and then Zap thought he was a turtle stuck on his back, cooking in the sun. There was a boy in their cell, who we'd later learn happened to be Billy Kessler, who caused a ruckus, which allowed Scarlet and Zap to acquire and then don Cobra Trooper outfits to sneak out of the facility and out of town. Snake Eyes, Scarlet, and Zap made it out of Springfield and hijacked the airship that had brought them there in the first place, and the pilot, at gunpoint, dropped them safely near the Bayonne Mall, where Marvel's The Hulk was having a grand opening. For the pipeline ploy in Alaska, Zap was paired with Wild Bill and Airborne to maneuver on the next pumping station while they worked to save the Alaskan pipeline from Cobra's latest scheme. When Wild Bill touched down at Pump Station 2, Zap monitored the onboard radio while the other two worked with the crew on security, but that crew turned out to be Cobra, which is when Zap burst into the station to save Wild Bill's life. This also made them some of the very first G.I. Joes to encounter Destro. A few issues later, Zap joined the team in the APC for a mission in Springfield, but Springfield, Vermont, where they again ran into Destro. And then in the waning moments of Cobra's Washington, D.C. invasion, Zap chased Cobra Commander out of town. He was now driving the APC with Grunt, Rock and Roll, Short Fuse, and Flash in the rig with him. As he drove, he was coordinating with the tank unit and trying to get some CAS from Ace in his Sky Striker. Inbound tangos distracted Ace, and even as he got tone on one of his targets and the twin Vulcan cannons the APC were towing lit up the sky, Cobra Commander managed to escape once again, slithering just out of their grasp. When the pit was destroyed and a Cobra attacked to recover Major Blood, Zap used his engineering expertise to direct the rebuilding effort. And then during the mission to Zartan's lair in the Florida Everglades, Zap was once again at the stick of a helicopter, with Rock and Roll riding shotgun and Mutt and Junkyard riding on the skids. Once they were feet dry, Zap hovered low so the recon team could insert. Zap stayed in the AO though to provide air support if needed. That decision led him into a DX with Wild Weasel and Firefly, who were cruising on the surface of the swamp in a water moccasin. Deep Six's Shark saved the day, so Zap and Wild Bill were able to RTB in their Dragonflies. In issue 33, as the roster began to rapidly expand, Zap was promoted one pay grade, and from this point on took on less of a part in comic book ongoing stories. During the invasion of Springfield, Zap ran through the hangars at the airport on recon while the rest assaulted, basically everywhere else in town. Zap was the one to find the tunnels that had allowed Cobra to escape. And then, because Zap didn't participate in the Cobra Civil War on Cobra Island, he was not arrested with most of the rest of the team, so Zap was able to take part in the rescue mission to rescue Generals Hawk and Hollingsworth, while the Ninja Team and some others made entry from other entry points. By issue 82, Zap was with Duke training new recruits on Fort Dix in New Jersey. Just as Budo, Lightfoot, and Repeater settled in after passing a Hell Week-type evolution, Duke and Zap burst in on the barracks to tell them to kit up and be ready on the flight line in 5 minutes. Cobra was attacking the nearby Picatinny Arsenal. They dropped the new recruits by one of the entrances in a tomahawk, and the newbies went to work on the Cobra Vipers there. In Special Mission 24, Zap was finally outside the wire with Falcon's team to protect POTUS at a baseball game. "It's great to be back in action," he said over comms. But like previously, he was there to monitor the radio chatter. And that completes the appearances that Zap made in the Marvel Comics era of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. In the Devil's Due continuity, Zap was part of the Cobra Island invasion to take on Serpentor and his cult called the Coil. For that operation, Zap was on Assault Team Alpha and tasked with deploying to North Beach via LCAC and establishing a beachhead. Later, he was made director of the New York field office, and he was in the city with Clutch when a building was bombed and both Hawk and Lady J were almost lost in the rubble. And then later, with the pit now below the Arizona desert, Duke called everyone back to service, and Zap was there when he informed the last of the original 13 that Hawk had officially stepped down, and the team would now be only 12 active agents. And then, back in the Hamaverse, after Larry Hama and IDW Publishing picked up the ARAH story with Marvel's original numbering, Zap showed up again in issue 185. He was paired with Spirit, Leatherneck, and Lieutenant Falcon and sent on a rescue and extraction mission in the Emirate of Benzine, tasked with bringing some Joes back home safely. For this mission, Ghost Rider was their pilot, flying them to the Middle East in a specially modified X-19 Bravo stealth fighter. In the dark of night, they landed on a prefab runway in the desert, which had been set up by Ripcord. And when they landed, they were able to link up with Ripcord. For the 15-click hump to the target, Zap was rear security for a modified wedge pattern. It turns out the Joes were being held at a remote prison where Farood and Darklon had met up to test a nuclear device. With both time and the lives of their battle buddies in question, they then decided to leave their hide and made a full frontal assault on the compound. On the way to the perimeter wall, Zap dropped to his knee and fired off a rocket at a guard tower. At one point, they were pinned down by an MG emplacement, and so both Leatherneck and Zap took it out with both rockets and hot lead. They managed to stop the explosion and rescue their teammates just as Wild Bill and Lifeline showed up with a tomahawk. Then for the Bob Graves rescue mission down in Sierra Gordo, Zap was part of Alpha Team once they haloed in and moved toward the Terrordrome where Graves and the other hostages were being held. Flint put Zap and Gung Ho on right flank security. Then at the actual structure, Flint paired Zap with Dialtone to help load and provide security for Roadblock and Rocky, who were to dig in at the tree line and provide intersecting fields of fire while the rest breached and made entry. It ended up being a trap and they were captured too, leaving it up to Bravo Team and the relief team along with Lola Graves to rescue them all. They ended up making it back to the pit in time to drive Cobra out, with Zap in long range driving a Mauler MBT for the counter-assault. They managed to push through the Cobra line and taking out enemy heavy armor in the process with their main cannon. Zap was still at the pit in Utah in issue 221, now that they were all officially recalled from other stations and assignments during the Cobra World Order event. In issue 251, Zap joined Stalker and Shipwreck as a three-man sniper team that went to Sierra Gordo in the middle of a neo-Trotskyite terrorist group hostage situation. Interesting choice for a sniper team, if I'm being honest. After they were ambushed and the terrorist situation started to heat up, Zap got the green light to send his depleted uranium rounds downrange, zapping bad guys to save hostages. And then for the Sean Collins throwdown rescue mission to Cobra's Springfield, Zap loaded on bus number 2 and joined in on the firefight in front of the Springfield Community Center. And so, Zap remains an active part of the G.I. Joe team and helps out on base in between missions. And that's where we leave him in Comic Book Stories as we transition from issue 300 to the new publisher. Voiced by Buster Jones, Zap appeared quite a bit in Sunbow's G.I. Joe animated series, though he mostly stayed quiet. He was in the original miniseries, but he remained at headquarters through that story, and then in Battle for the Train of Gold, Zap was at Fort Knox and later on a horse chasing down a train. In Cobra's Candidate, he was captured by the Dreadnoks, and then in an episode called The Funhouse, Zap helped attack a Cobra base in South America called, appropriately, The Funhouse, which is when he was able to lean into his demolitions expertise to rescue Flint, Zook, Dusty, Alpine, LJ, and Airtight. And then as one of the original 13 G.I. Joes, Zap debuted as an action figure with straight arms in 82, but then he got the swivel arm treatment in 83 and reissued in mail-away offers like Operation Freedom and Get Your Gear. In 1992, Zap was an electronic supersonic fighter that could make 4 sonic battle sounds. In 97, Zap was boxed in a Toys R Us exclusive box set called Stars and Stripes Forever. And then in 2004, Zap was included in a 3-pack that also included Snake Eyes and Grunt, and then, as I mentioned previously, Comic Book Issue 4 reprint. 2007's Zap was part of the convention-exclusive Tanks for the Memories box set. And then the 2009 Zap was in the Assault on Cobra Island box set. To summarize Zap, we once again turn to his file cards and both a quote from Hawk and Zap's own motto, which say, "Here's a guy that not only likes blowing things up, we pay him to do it." Sergeant Zap maintains his cool at all times. Setting up explosive devices is nerve-wracking, but he handles it and keeps coming back for more. A true professional and well-liked both for his abilities and his courage. My advice is to keep your helmet on when he's around. Something will be exploding nearby. And his motto is, "I open tanks like they were sardine cans." And with that, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.